Thank you to Aero for sponsoring this video.
For $1,100, Apple's MacBook Air is ridiculously overpriced. I mean, a Y processor? Seriously, Apple, my Galaxy S8 is faster than that. And don't even get me started on trying to run Premiere on this thing. It's just not gonna happen. Who is buying this thing?
I can't watch another one of those videos. This isn't gonna be about Geekbench scores, numbers on a spreadsheet, theoretical max horsepower, or overclocking. Apple computers are expensive, and they're oftentimes more expensive than their PC counterparts. And recently, there's been even more reasons aside from cost to not buy an Apple laptop. And I'm not here to tell you what you should buy, where you should spend your money, but a lot of people choose to go the Apple route. And for those folks, oftentimes they're looking at the entry-level computer. And now that's the MacBook Air, and what you get with the Air is a pretty good computer. And when Apple's lowest cost laptop is good, it makes the rest of the laptop industry step up their game. When Steve Jobs took to Macworld in 2008, laptops looked nothing like they do today. They were generally big, chunky hunks of plastic, and if you wanted something small and portable, you had to sacrifice a bunch of power and go the netbook route. But then, Steve Jobs did this.
Let me take it out here. This is the new MacBook Air, and you can get a feel for how thin it is.
And the rest is history. Laptops have never looked the same. So the MacBook Air has kind of been Apple's testbed for new laptop stuff. So it was the first to adopt flash storage. When it first hit in 2008, it was only 64 gigs, which should have been a sign of things to come, removal of ports. There was no optical disk drive, but what it did do was it kind of brought the premium feel of the MacBook Pro downstream. And when it launched, it was cool, it was nice, it was sleek, it obviously fit inside of an envelope in most backpacks, but it was not the computer for most people. So when Apple killed the unibody MacBook, the MacBook Air was mature enough to become sort of the default go-to for people who wanted the combination and often the sacrifice of portability and power. That was the niche that the MacBook Air sort of carved itself into. Then Apple introduced the MacBook, the 12-inch, and it was thin, it was light, it was less powerful, had a new design language, and it kind of out-MacBook Aired the MacBook Air. But what Apple did do, they reduced the price of the Air. So it started to become the default computer for people who just wanted to spend the least amount of money, but still get in to the Mac ecosystem. So after more laptop shuffling, killing the MacBook line and different updates, the MacBook Air, she lives in 2019, and it got some modern clothes. And for the $1,100 price point, it is still the cheapest way to get a Mac laptop. And I'm not going to say you shouldn't buy a Windows computer or hop on the Best Buy or Amazon Prime deal for a $600, HP or Dell laptop. Those are great computers and serve a purpose for a lot of people. But for those folks that doesn't work for, that want a MacBook, and at least a MacBook Air, $1,100 is still a lot of money. What you're getting now is a better value than ever before. You're getting, I think, one of the best trackpads in the market, and I'm tempted to say you're getting a really good keyboard. How about this? The keyboard works well. This is the best version of the Butterfly out there. So while it's still working, the keyboard is pretty solid. You're not getting a touch bar, which for me is almost a plus. I'd prefer to not have a touch bar. You're getting a beautiful screen, you've got Touch ID built in, and then sort of a new modern, doesn't look like it's from the mid-2000s design anymore. If you're planning using this as your video editing machine, you're doing 3D rendering, you want to play games or throw Boot Camp and Windows on it and game on it that way, then this is not going to be the computer for you. You'll be disappointed. And when I returned to mine, I was hoping it could do a lot of those things that ended up not doing. If you're a college student, you want a computer for the family, a high school student, some things you could watch YouTube videos on, you could watch movies on, something that'll sync with your iPhone or iPad, can easily run Microsoft Office or even Photoshop, that can do general computing, it is still a really good option. So the argument for getting Macs used to be, they don't get viruses, they can't get any malware, and while that was kind of true, it wasn't that Macs couldn't get them, and nefarious folks who write viruses started writing more and more for Mac OS, which means, like any computer, you gotta make sure your stuff is protected. And that's where a company like Arrow and Arrow's antivirus offering comes into play. The icon's in the upper right-hand corner, you click on it, you can access all the settings, you could run a scan if you want to. That's sort of where all the controls are gonna live. So if it finds anything, it'll quarantine it for you and give you a full report. So what you get with Arrow is actually real-time detection. So you will know, like, at the moment that you're clicking that email from your aunt, that you know she's sending you something bad, and you could stop something bad from happening before it goes in and infects your computer. And just be safe when you use your computer. And having some sort of virus protection like Arrow is the best way to keep yourself and your loved ones safe. So if you want to learn more or check out Arrow for yourself, we'll link to them down below. So I would be a crazy person to sit here and tell you that the MacBook Air is reasonably priced. Like all of Apple's portfolio, it is more expensive than I and probably you would like it to be. But for an entry level into Apple's world, you are getting a computer with a really good software experience and pretty incredible fit and finish. I think that same thing, the kind of expensive, the pro of fit and finish and software, is true across all of Apple's entry level products. They're not the cheapest, but you still get sort of what you want it to do in a good looking package. The Mac Mini, you've got your lower level iPad, you've got the iPod Touch, the iPhone XR. Apple doesn't do cheap, so to speak, but if you opt to spend that money for an Apple product, you are still generally getting a very positive, non-degraded experience. If you look at like the iPad Pro, it's a beautifully made, well-designed tablet. It's probably my favorite Apple product ever made. But it's not really better at iPadding and iPad OSing than the iPad that's $600 less. Same thing for the iPhone XR and the iPhone XS Max. Little lower quality screen, but it's not worse at phone stuff or even much slower than what you get with the iPhone XS Max. You're not losing out on anything by going the entry level. And listen, I know that there's plenty of Apple hate out there. I'm sure there'll probably be a ton in the comments, but just like the phone world, as Apple's design goes, tend to go the rest of the market. So Apple's entry-level laptops, you look at the MacBook Air and the previous MacBook, it forced PC manufacturers to step up their game. So now you've got premium, good-looking laptops on the Windows side, and perhaps those would have come anyway without Apple, but I do think Apple made those laptops generally come to market much faster than they would have otherwise. So the MacBook Air, for a lot of people, is the default Mac purchase. Yes, it is expensive, probably doesn't have the specs that you think and I think it should have. But for what you are getting, the entry point into the Mac ecosystem, it's still a very good computer and it does a lot of things really well. And for the folks that are choosing to spend their money for a MacBook Air, what it does is enough for them.